We had started to see the beginning of a Bitcoin recovery, and as you'll know from watching this YouTube channel, it's not actually a Bitcoin question. We have to look at US equities, where the S&P 500 has managed to bounce beautifully off its major zone of support that we had drawn out here with this yellow box. We had resistance here, a little bit of support, and now a big bounce up here to end the bearish week that we had last week. So maybe some good things coming in for Monday. And obviously it begs the question for Bitcoin, is Bitcoin going to be able to recover from this? And if so, how is that going to look? And the really good news for Bitcoin is it kind of bounced off a random level like 78, and that's completely fine. We weren't really trying to predict where it would bounce from other than the obvious levels, because that's really all that you have. If you're kind of picking fringe weird levels like 78, then your analysis generally is probably not going to be very good, but it might work in like extremely niche circumstances like that. But what we had right here was a really strong V-shaped recovery, right? I mean, what we're looking for, and I've outlined this with you guys many times on this YouTube channel, is that the number one kind of bounce pattern that you want to see is that classic V-shape where you basically go up about as quickly as you came down, and that's going to be a really strong sign of strength in the market. And so we are starting to develop that. If we zoom in even further on the hourly, we can see how we're kind of we're holding steady over here. It's not amazing, but it's certainly not horrible. And mind you, by the way, this is the first time that Bitcoin has ever traded in this price range for longer than basically nothing. And so, we are actually establishing some real price history here for the first time ever. This is actually price discovery mode, right? We're discovering price levels right here. So, this is quite important to kind of see what happens for Bitcoin, because if we can actually show a little bit of strength in this range and maybe kind of bounce off these lows like 83, then that could actually paint a really good picture for Bitcoin. Now, the only problem is obviously there's going to be a lot of kind of signs that are, going to be a little bit bearish for Bitcoin at this stage. Now, obviously, I wouldn't have really been worried about this if we didn't dump this far, but the fact that we did, I mean, it's hard to call this a deviation, right? If we kind of measure this from the low, that's going to be 13%, and really the real support level, in my opinion, was 91.5, and so that's going to be about a 15% drop from the low. But I should really importantly point out to you guys that we've had big deviations before, right? Take a look at this beautiful $60,000 support level that we had back in the previous range that we were trading in last year, and this deviation ended up taking Bitcoin down by 17%, and then there was a recovery. So I wouldn't actually want to rule that out, because if we kind of study how history moved at that point, this was basically the second last deviation that Bitcoin saw, and then it, basically, I mean, especially from this low, by the way, it actually more than doubled. So, and that's actually, incredibly impressive when you consider how long that took. That was just about 4.5 months for Bitcoin to pull off a 2.2 times gain. I mean, we're talking about Bitcoin, right? If we bring it back to the global assets by market cap chart, or table, I don't know what you call it. We are seeing a $1.7 trillion Bitcoin, market cap right here. So definitely very large. And, obviously Bitcoin would have been maybe about, roughly half of this earlier, but, or even a little bit less than, a little bit more than half now, because Bitcoin's been dropping. It was still a really big increase to add to that Bitcoin market cap. And I think this is what people really forget when the market drops very extremely. And obviously that's why we're here. If you appreciate the content that we're putting out on this YouTube channel, then definitely smash those likes up and double check that you're subscribed. While you're down there, ladies and gents, there are some phenomenal offers if you're interested in trading on the best platforms in the game. Bybit, undoubtedly. The beautiful thing about Bybit that I think is actually quite poetic is that despite the hack that they've had, their liquidity is actually still the best in the game, and they've actually recently upgraded their liquidity on spot markets as well. So unironically, as I was saying when they did first get hacked, they are still the strongest player in the game. They had the biggest stress test in crypto history, right? I mean, the most withdrawals ever. I think it was like over 2 billion inside of like 6 hours, and flawless, basically. They did have a little bit of delays on the Ethereum chain, and we understand why. They had no Ethereum tokens, but all you had to do is swap your Ethereum for Cardano, XRP, Bitcoin, USDT, whatever the hell you like, and you would have been able to send it out. So honestly, very impressive crisis management. We've seen a lot of other exchanges, big exchanges, deal with issues like this, including Binance, and they would lock down withdrawals for a week or so. But this, I think, is very impressive. So if that looks like a vote of confidence to you as well, then definitely check that link out in the description. When you start trading on this link, you're going to get up to $30,000 for free, and spot trading is completely free as well. So that's really cool. You can deploy this capital back into the market, and any money you make with that is going to be yours to withdraw, which is super cool. Blowfin is a great alternative as well, and they are still running a very aggressive campaign for you guys, where depending on your trading volumes, you will be able to get a Tesla Model 3, a Kawasaki motorbike, just based on your trade. So really, really cool stuff there. Definitely check that out. I don't know what's happened here with the links in the description, but obviously, as usual, only if you're not from a restricted region. Okay, don't check these exchanges out if your country bans them, because you won't be able to use them. But bringing it back to the market here. Like I said, I think a lot of people, kind of really lose their shit, at lows like this. But we've got to keep in mind that there's a few things we've got to keep in mind before I continue on with the video. It's not exactly what you came here for, but you'll thank me for it afterwards. And the real first thing that we got to keep in mind is that we're visualizing these markets in terms of levels, okay? So we've got the level here at $90,000. We've got the level here at $70,000, and we have nothing in between. And we need to be very unemotional about the fact that we have nothing in between, okay? This is going to breed some really, really big percentage drops. And in this case, it did. It didn't go all the way. It could go all the way. I think that it could as well. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the point very much being that, we are in a situation in this market, ladies and gents, where, we're going to have a lot of empty gaps in the price, okay? And and it is our duty as winning traders and winning investors, people that actually make money in these markets, it is our duty to not get emotional over these ranges, okay? Because we already know what's going to happen. We already know that when you go up, you're going to move up very quickly. When you go down, you're going to move down very quickly. And so we mustn't get excited and we mustn't get scared on situations like this. If we do, then we're just sheep, okay? We're no better than the other losing traders in the market, and that's not what we're here for. That's not what we're here for. So that's exactly what we're bringing on this YouTube channel. It's just that understanding that, this is level 1 and this is level 2, and we don't really care what happens in between. And that allows us to stay completely emotionally detached until we come down to 67. I mean, ideally always emotionally attached, but until we come down to 67 up to about 72, that's still going to be a very, very good buy range for Bitcoin. I've said basically the low is going to be, I know it sounds silly, but I'm not scared of saying it. This is the macro lower low that we need to not hold. This is the macro low that we need to not break. Anything above that level is good in my books. Anything. And I also want to point out one more thing while we're starting to get bullish again, because that's what we're here for, is that if Bitcoin, for some reason, does not manage to pull off a 40, 50%, maybe even more correction inside of this bull market, it will be the first time that ever happened. Okay, let's get very, very real about this. If Bitcoin right now does not form, or later, but if it doesn't form a 40 or 50% correction inside of its bull market, that would be the first time that ever happened. Now, look, I'm not here to say that things are different, right? And we're going to start bucking trends that we used to stick to very, very well, or something on the opposite, okay? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is simply that we've done it every single time before, and it would be highly unusual if we don't do it again today. And that's why I think it's even more compelling that Bitcoin could come down to these levels. Do I think it will? Hell no. I don't think it's actually going to happen, but my God, if it did, it would be the best thing that could happen to you, all right? You might not agree with me right now, but all you've got to do is look at the Bitcoin chart, pick any year in Bitcoin's price history, and look at the Bitcoin chart, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. It does actually work out very, very well for Bitcoin. So I think that's really, really important. Just to make that extra clear, I do want to point out that we had this situation last time. A lot of people are saying that this could be Bitcoin's worst case right now, which I think is kind of funny. If it is, then it would imply that, we kind of come down. And by the way, look at how poetic this is. It's 54% from the all-time high, and so is this. So, 55. So I think that's just kind of crazy in and of itself. But the implication is that we come up for like $115,000 all-time high, and then the bull market's over. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen too. We can really dive into all of that stuff in just a moment here, but what I want to focus on is zooming in a little bit and talking to you about how this recovery might continue to go. So what's really interesting is this V-shaped correction and the fact that we're holding. That means that essentially in order to keep holding this level, we're going to have to hold this support zone, I would say, down here. I mean, there's a couple of support zones. I could draw this as low as here or as high as here, and I think all of them are valid. I just like the look of saying that, down here is kind of reasonable, because it gives us a little bit of room to kind of dip and then, establish a kind of sideways trading range and then hopefully kind of continue on from there. And I would say that that's kind of about the best case scenario for Bitcoin. Obviously, it would be slightly better if Bitcoin moves up right now, but, at the end of the day, we kind of get to the same place. The issue is what happens to Bitcoin if it gets up to this low $90,000 region, right? Because it was actually, quite strong support for a very, very long time. If we go ahead and kind of measure what we're looking at in this range, because I do want to see just, how many times Bitcoin has actually been able to enjoy support of this low $90,000 region. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 attempts of support over here. 9 if you count this, but that would be a little bit too generous. And so a lot of support coming off this price level. And, rightfully, I think if Bitcoin did end up coming back up here, there would be a little bit of resistance for Bitcoin to deal with. But again, it's actually not a Bitcoin question. And I've come back to this idea many, many, many times with you guys on this YouTube channel. Really, we're just waiting to see what the S&P 500 does. And so, to be honest, we've kind of got this weekend, as a playground for Bitcoin to enjoy itself. But outside of this weekend, to be honest, we're going to be at the mercy of the S&P 500. And if we take a look at the S&P 500, we can actually start to kind of get an idea of where some resistance might be on this chart. And you've got a little spike right here and a little spike right here. Those are kind of the only two kind of zones that I'd be worried about for the S&P 500. And I wouldn't say that they're particularly horrible. I mean, to be honest, look, it set an all-time high right here. It consolidated, a little bit of resistance and support, whatever, kind of coming off this range. So, there is some stuff happening at this level, 6,000 flat for the S&P 500. And obviously, this could turn into a kind of rejection zone for the S&P 500 as such, turning into a bigger drop. And if this is what happens, then that probably translates to a $90,000 Bitcoin up here and a 70,000 Bitcoin down here, right? Something like that. And so that would be something that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for. But obviously, if the S&P 500 kind of continues to go up, then, it's got its next zone at 60.50. Neither of these are particularly strong levels of resistance, but let's be clear, the S&P 500 doesn't need a strong level of resistance. What it needs is a narrative in the news, to be honest. And so that's actually gonna be more of a Trump tariff question. And we're just going to have to see how that plays out. Now, there is the event in the White House, which is taking place in a couple of days, and that's actually March 7. Wow, that's like super close. And that's actually kind of interesting because it could definitely be an indication of some pumping. I don't know, some pump-worthy news, I guess we could say, if that did end up happening. I want to see if I can actually go ahead and pull that tweet up for you because it is actually quite interesting. Let me go ahead and see if I can pull that up right here on the White House page. I don't know if it was actually on the White House page. I can't remember, but here we are on Twitter. This Twitter page has been lit recently, ladies and gents. Fucking hell. These guys are really, they're posting here. I don't think it's actually right here necessarily, but yeah, they did make an announcement for a March 7 crypto event, and that could definitely be something that turns out to be a little bit bullish for Bitcoin. Typically, and I said this on my profile, these are just going to be seldom news events. Okay, so I actually had a friend that asked me for my thoughts on the market, and this is the message that I responded to him with. I think that a lot of you guys would appreciate hearing kind of how I speak to my friends as well. And basically his question was, where would Bitcoin bottom, and when might be a good time to buy? And here's my somewhat detailed answer. I'd expect anything above 60k, and I think it's very likely that we don't fall below 67. Okay, so let's translate this back to the chart real quick. I don't think that we fall below 67 because we've already mustered a nice bounce over here, and I just think Bitcoin's stronger than that, right? Like, I think that this is a really strong support zone stretching all the way down to about 67 over here, and I just don't really think that Bitcoin's going to be breaking it. I could be wrong. I've been wrong about stuff like this before, but it looks good to me. Again, it's actually, like I said, it's more of a question about the U.S. government right now, to be honest, and so we're gonna have to see how those tariffs go. But the way these tariffs have gone so far, the way everything actually in this administration has gone so far, is saying something will happen and making it sound like it's about to happen. We're talking about the files, we're talking about the tariffs, we're talking about a lot of stuff. I'm sure there are a lot of exceptions, and you're not smart for pointing them out. If you think that you're smart for pointing them out, then get the fuck off my YouTube channel, because you really lack a lot of intellect for this YouTube channel. We're making a point, which is abundantly clear at this point, which is that this administration has said a lot, but not actually done anywhere near as much as they said they would do. And if that continues to translate for tariffs, then that's probably very bullish for us, because it means that tariffs just aren't going to come in. And if the US gets its way, then the US markets are probably going to do well as well. well. So I don't know. I could be wrong about all of that. There's a lot of assumptions I'm making in what I just said. I need to research it a little bit more before I can talk about it. I know that you guys want me to talk about it more because, quite frankly, you don't have a choice. You have to look at this stuff right now. But, I gave it my best shot at understanding it. And also at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. But what I do want to focus on where was it? I completely forgot. So let's keep on rolling with this for now and talk about the potential attack at this level. Now, if Bitcoin kind of comes up to this level, it's going to have some potential rejection price action happening. And the really good thing about this price range that we're developing right now is that this would be our first line of defense. Okay, if Bitcoin kind of came down to this level, this would be our first line of defense to get higher. And so I think that would actually be quite powerful for Bitcoin if it is able to do something about that. Okay, if Bitcoin is able to kind of find a rejection here, but then find support off this 85k level, that's actually going to be Bitcoin's best case scenario, in my opinion. That's going to be what really allows Bitcoin to send itself higher. And I think it's the best bull case that Bitcoin holders have right now in this market. It would also make sense. It would also fit in with, what we've done previously in every single consolidation event in this market so far, where we have had deviation type price action. And on this occasion here, it was actually very, very light. It was like almost non-existent compared to, for example, right here. And of course, the very, very famous one, where we had basically 4 big deviations taking place in this range, which was quite crazy. And actually, it's a little bit unfair to say that they were deviations because we do know that this was more of a kind of downward sloping resistance channel. Downward sloping price channel. But we still did get quite big deviations even out of that. And that's why, I kind of held on to the idea of a deviation for so long. And that's why I think that, even though I wouldn't really count this as a deviation, and nor would I count, losing this as a deviation because that was just far too big. Ultimately, what, this market has shown us is that it does like to sweep those lows a little bit and then just kind of reclaim the range. And, it's business as usual again for a little bit before you pump. That's literally what's happened the past 2 times. And we're still following in those footsteps. Really, the only difference is that we dropped by a bigger amount than, I would want us to, if that happened. But I'm not losing sleep over that either because so far this recovery has looked good. And like I said, it is still contingent on the S&P 500 and what happens with, just generally kind of US equities and stuff like that. So we're going to have to kind of continue to watch that to see how it goes. But if we bring it back to this tweet, I want to continue kind of going through this with you. I think that with the White House crypto event March 7, there is something to look forward to, although worth noting that these are usually buy the hype and sell the news events. And this is another big thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is that if we see Bitcoin kind of slowly getting back up to 91k over these next 5-6 days leading into March 7 when the White House holds their event, then that's going to be more of a sell the news event to me. Now if Bitcoin kind of gets above this range before March 7, then I'm a little bit more neutral about it. But we've essentially got a bullish event heading into a macro resistance area. It's not a good setup. All right, as a classic kind of technical analyst, that that's what I am, that's how I learned. That's just not going to be a good setup for the market. Let's very quickly take a peek at the Fear and Greed Index, which is still extremely low, ladies and gents. Look at this, a reading of 10 followed by 16 and now 20. It will update in just the next 4 hours, so we'll see how that goes. But still, a very, very low reading on the Fear and Greed Index, which I think is obviously going to be one of the primary reasons that we've seen at this point a fairly strong bounce. But let's continue with that tweet right here. There is... DCA is by far the best strategy here because no one can really answer your question unless they're number 1 scamming you or number 2 stupid or stupidly arrogant. And what I'm describing here is that no one can really tell you when it's going to be a good time or where it might bottom. Really, the best indication you can ever get is just looking at support levels. Honestly, horizontal support levels are typically going to be the best and most reliable, but you're going to have a couple of random things like maybe there's going to be a Fibonacci in between. That's still something that I would pay attention to. That actually worked out in this case. So if you're watching the Fibonacci's, that actually would have been pretty good. And there are going to be a couple more indicators that kind of give you some, some support, generally in this range. But you can't rely on anything as much as you can rely on the basics. And people who don't understand the basics won't tell you that, but you will understand the basics after watching this YouTube channel very, very well. And hopefully you can kind of ground yourself in them because it doesn't really matter what you do afterwards, whether you get very complex or you stay very basic like I do. If you can get the basics right, you're going to be very, very strong and you're going to have a really, really quite solid grasp of what's going on in the market. And that's ultimately what you really want. That's the best thing you could ask for. And I know better than to seek answers to such questions, right? Such questions of where might it bottom and when might be a good time to buy, because they're very hard to get right and they're not worth predicting. Okay, they're not worth predicting. If you were the guy that was, kind of looking to catch the bottom and you missed it or whatever, it would have been very, very brutal, and DCA would have saved you from that. Dollar cost averaging, right? So the best strategy is always DCA, and it allows you to scale your entries dynamically on red weeks, which is really powerful as an investment strategy, because you can actually double down on weeks like this where the price drops aggressively. Also, it's not actually a Bitcoin question. It relies entirely on the strength of traditional risk markets. So you need to look at the S&P 500 and for that Trump. And Trump makes it unpredictable due to tariffs. But I expect that to get better in a few weeks. And actually, the S&P 500, like I said, is in a very, very healthy spot. So go follow me on Twitter if you want some of my shit posts as well. Sometimes I drop some good stuff like that as well. Very, very cool. Bitcoin's dominance has started to take a little bit of a leg up. And Ethereum specifically has taken a significant leg down. This is the first time that we're actually seeing daily closes coming down to this kind of range against Bitcoin here. So that's not good for ETH BTC. Solana BTC, did start a little bit of a recovery, but that's not really going well. BNB holding its level right here. Nothing particularly crazy to talk about there. XRP has fallen out of its ascending triangle pattern, but this is not the kind of thing that I would look to trade because I just think that XRP is a little bit more dangerous in those kind of trade setups. But who knows? That could be a good short setup. I do think that a reclaim of the range for XRP is actually quite possible at this stage. But again, it's going to depend on Bitcoin. XRP against Bitcoin, just kind of holding steady. Some of our shittier shit coins are, they're just kind of hanging out. They're actually not doing too bad, but they're not doing amazing either. I think there is an argument to be made that, and it really depends on what happens next, but I think there is an argument to be made that we kind of had, a floor kind of like this for a lot of coins, and then we fell below that floor briefly, and they've actually managed to, from the strength that they showed over the last few days, they've actually managed to recover back above this neckline, and, that could lead to, something a little bit like that. And we've actually seen that before, I think even on this chart, if I'm not mistaken, right here. We've seen this happen, honestly, quite often in the altcoin market, where you establish a pretty nice respected low, but you sweep it, and then, shortly after sweeping it, you recover and kind of move back and start setting all-time highs, or at least trend up quite aggressively. So I think that that's still really possible for a lot of these altcoins. I think it's still worth kind of watching Bitcoin. I think what's really, really important at this stage is just kind of figuring out how legitimate any recoveries that we're seeing right now are. I think, if you're just looking at the S&P 500, which is probably the smartest thing to do, then it's actually looking really good. That's kind of what I think. Because, ultimately, we're still consolidating at the all-time high, right? Like, we haven't lost the support level until we lose the support level. And, if we come down to support and you just get really bearish, then you're basically going to miss every single really nice buy opportunity that ever comes up. So, I can understand the human aspect of like wanting to be a little bit scared at kind of price levels like that. But as far as, actually being a profitable trader goes, believe it or not, when the price is low, that is when you actually want to be clicking buy. And I know that might come as a shock to a lot of people in crypto. Hopefully not to you guys. And like I said, if you got that free cash these exchanges are giving you, then who the hell cares? You can throw that shit anywhere you like. And any profits that you generate with that capital is going to be yours to keep. So like I said, if you're already signed up, all you got to do is start trading and you'll get those bonuses both on Blowfin and on Bybit. Check them out again if you're not from a restricted region. Super important to be compliant with your laws. Gold right here has seen a further drop, which is, I don't know, I don't really get it. It's kind of disappointing, but it makes sense. It's come off the $3,000 price level. We'll just have to see how that goes. I guess the really good thing is that if gold is dropping, that could be an indication that speculative traders, especially in the commodities markets, are not expecting a larger scale war in Russia and Ukraine, right? They might be expecting that actually kind of starts to wind down. That could be an indication of gold drop. I have no fucking idea. I'm talking out my ass, but it kind of makes sense because the opposite is definitely true, right? When a war does break out, you will see gold move up. So maybe when a war closes off, gold looks a little bit less appealing. I don't know. You guys probably have a better idea of that than I do. But yeah, crypto market looking okay. Trump coin looking pretty interesting, actually. I think there's some potential trade opportunities starting to surface here. I think one of the interesting ones is, again, it's like I said, we kind of sweep that low and then just recover back up. So if this thing kind of keeps trending down to about $12.50, that's going to become a pretty interesting buy zone, to send this thing a little bit higher. And I'm actually going to go ahead and set an alert for that because I don't know if that's something I'm going to trade, but I want to see it when it happens and make that decision. if it does come to it. But that's going to be about it, right? There's not actually that much that's particularly interested in crypto. You could look at a lot of charts, right? Like I could have made this a video where I looked at all of your favorite coins, and you know what, we can actually take a quick look now that I'm saying it. But ultimately what you're gonna see across the board is that none of these analysis pieces that I can do for you actually matter if the S&P 500 is dropping. So we really can't have informed discussions about this stuff until we actually know what's going on with equities and stuff like that, because they're all just gonna have varying degrees of the same level of shitness or niceness that Bitcoin is experiencing, and they won't actually deviate that much. There are always going to be exceptions, but exceptions don't disprove the rule, as we know very, very well. So, that's something I'm going to kind of keep in mind as we continue on in this market. If you have enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Smash those likes up, double check that you're subscribed, do all of that good stuff, and I will see you all in the next video. If you're interested in the Bybit debit card, that's absolutely sick. They got the metal one coming out very soon for higher tier VIP members. Check it all out. Like I said, increased spot liquidity, very, very cool. Always check your country's local laws and regulations before you get on these platforms, though, just to make sure you are allowed to. But there you go, ladies and gents. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and you know what to do, and I'll see you all in the next one.